Hey guys, it's Dan or aDrive, the creator of Elestrals here, and today we're doing a really awesome video that I'm pretty excited about. We're gonna be doing an Ask Me Anything style video where my buddy Keith is actually gonna ask me questions that you guys brought to us from our Discord server, and I'm gonna answer them without having seen the question or anything like that. So I think this will be a really good way to kind of increase the transparency behind the scenes of what I'm doing in developing Elestrals, answer your questions, and kind of give you just a relaxed, laid back kind of setting where we're answering questions and just giving you guys our thoughts behind the scenes. So I'm hoping to make this a pretty regular series, and if you guys want to submit your questions, you can go to discord.gg/Elestrals, and you can just go to the AMA section there and you can leave your question and it might get picked for the next video. But as I said, I don't know what questions I'm about to get asked and I don't have any answers prepared or anything like that, but I'm very excited to kind of dive in and hopefully give you guys some thoughts. And I'm really excited to introduce Keith, who's been a very long time aDrive Army member. He's been a part of the channel as a moderator and admin for, I don't even know, like a decade. And, you know, got involved in the Elestrals project, man. So I'm stoked to have you here, Keith. What's going on, dude?
I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for having me. Yeah, no, this is just something that was suggested in the Discord server. We thought it was a great idea, and here we are. It's really nice that we can actually, you know, not only take the feedback from all the people in the Discord server and returns to, like, you know, the game itself, but also how to interact with the fans themselves. So I think this is really cool.
Let's get it, man. I'm excited. So you're just gonna read me the question and tell me who said it, and then I'll just give you my thoughts, right?
Yeah, let's just get it started. All right, this first question is from Violet Cerulege. And they ask, will Elestrals be distributed out to card stores in the near future? Because I would love to get some of these cards if possible.
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think that that's a question that a lot of people have. So the plan is to ultimately get out to local card shops and to get into retail stores and get into every store we possibly can, right? Like the objective is as much ubiquity as possible to make Elestrals as widespread and accessible for you guys as possible. However, with that being said, I think it's very important that we, as a company, we Elestrals, have our direct-to-customer channel set up, which is basically our website, right? So at the current moment, I have a team of people actually overhauling our website to allow for some really, really cool things, and also just give us the opportunity to sell directly to you. So you just go to, you know, Elestrals.com and you'd be able to buy cards there in a few months. So that's what we're setting up first. And the reason why I think that that's so important is a few reasons. The first one is I have to have like fulfillment set up behind the scenes. We have to have inventory, all these different things for that to all take place. But by having, you know, kind of a direct way to sell to you guys, it makes the products accessible. It keeps the prices at what they should be, and you're not dealing with any sort of aftermarket or secondary market prices right now. And it obviously allows the business to grow, because when you sell product to a distributor or you sell product to a local game store, you're selling that at a pretty significant discount because they need to make a profit too. When you're the store itself, then that means you can kind of offer better deals and you can keep your prices low because you don't lose that margin, I guess, when selling directly to a store or to a distributor. So initially, that kind of stuff is really important because we're going to be printing in smaller quantities as we grow the business. The second thing, and probably the most important piece of this puzzle, is being able to support those stores efficiently and effectively once they have product. So once I can get enough product in hand, which is still a ways away, and I can get it to the stores, which I have all the pieces that are getting in place to have that happen, I have to be able to help the stores sell the product, right? Because if the store buys a bunch of product and they can't sell it, then they're not going to want to carry Elestrals. They're not going to want to run tournaments. They're not going to want to do these different things. So part of my job is to figure out how can I make it worthwhile for stores to carry the product, which a lot of it comes down to just being able to sell the product. But also, like, how can I give promo incentives or play mats or promo cards or tournament stuff, or like what can I do to help facilitate the growth of these stores? You may think it would be very smart for me to just like try to get Elestrals into as many stores as possible, as fast as possible, but I want to be very honest that I plan to take a slow and steady approach to this. I plan to be methodical and meticulous, and I plan to be very aware so I can learn at a select number of stores first, learn what works, learn what doesn't work, and then we start to spread that out to bigger audiences and bigger, you know, demographics and larger, you know, distribution locations and things like that. So there's a few pieces to the puzzle here. The end goal is 100% to be in stores. That is definitely the focal point. But right now, I think it's so crucial for me to have my direct-to-customer channel set up, which is our direct store to you guys, for, again, a couple reasons. One, it makes the product accessible, keeps the secondary market from potentially blowing up things when the quantities are very limited at the beginning, and it also maintains our margins so we can offer discounts and things like that, and also give ourselves a chance to scale the company. And then number two is being able to support the stores when they have products, so that way they can be successful, thus we can be successful, and we can grow Elestrals together. So that's really like the full kind of stripped down answer of everything. There's a lot of pieces to it, but I think slow and steady wins the race on this one, and I just want to make sure that we're making smart and tactful decisions to ensure the success of not only Elestrals but the stores and anyone else we're working with. So long and short answer is yes, hopefully in store soon.
But to say, and again, Dan hasn't seen any of those questions, so he just has all of that in his head already, which is impressive. And also
that's my job.
Yeah, just to show how like prepared and how like driven you are to actually make this work. So that's super cool. All right, so our next question is going to be from Dark Dragon. From their general understanding, you guys are already developing a second Elestral set, even if the present set has yet to get a first edition out because of Kickstarter. So their question is, how many sets do you plan to do a year? 2 to 3? What's your grand vision?
Yeah, so another great question. One of the kind of core ethos pieces of Elestrals is that I don't want to release sets too frequently. One of the things is, as myself as a card game player and someone who's played trading card games my whole life, one of the things that was really frustrating for me is not being able to keep up, right? Because we're all limited by our time, our resources, our funds to be able to keep up with something like this, right? In this world of ever changing, right? So a lot of times what happens with card games is they recognize that the more sets they release, the more money ultimately comes into the business. That's just the reality, right? But I think that there is certainly a middle ground here where you can release sets that are going to change the game in a positive way, encourage people to want to try the new things without breaking people's wallets in trying to do so. And I think that there's a sweet spot of frequency that I hope to aim for, which is approximately 3 sets a year. Now, I don't want to sit here and say that we're never going to do 4 or 5 or 6 sets in a year. I have no idea what the future holds, but at least for the short term, that is certainly my plan. I would say 2 to 3 sets per year, which is like a full, set with booster boxes, starter decks, that kind of stuff. Approximately to me, a set is, anywhere from 65 to 100 plus cards. I don't think you're going to see as big of sets as base set, which is 125. I can tell you that set 2 is approximately about 100 cards right now, but that's including like full arts and stellars. So 2 to 3 sets per year is definitely the plan. I do want to say that I have some other things that I want to do as well that are not going to be focused around new competitive cards, but rather alternative art cards. So it's going to be more along the lines of what we did with the artist collection. I have some really cool plans for that are going to, kind of have some releases throughout the year at a more consistent basis. But again, those are going to be something that are really optional, more for collectors, that kind of stuff, different arts. It's not going to have a change of the tide in terms of competitive. It's going to make some of the better cards more accessible and things like that. So a lot of really positive stuff there, but like I said, kind of the summary of this is I want to keep the sets to 2 to 3. At the end of the day, I'm like writing pretty much every effect right now, guys. Like I'm the one who creates the cards themselves, not all the artwork, but the cards. So I only can do so much myself, right? But even so, I think 2 to 3 sets per year is a really good place to be, not only for this year, but next year as well. And even a year in advance from there, I think is probably smart. I don't want to get in the habit of rushing sets out just for the sake of making the, card printers and I guess in this case, money printers go burr, right? Like I know that there's a delicate balance here and I don't want to wear people out, but I want to still keep the game exciting. I think 2 to 3 sets a year gets us there.
Because the wear and tear is real. I've played other card games before, and there's nothing quite like getting the deck that you want together, just to be told, okay, cool, here's the new set that makes that completely irrelevant. So
yeah, and I've been there. Like I said, I've been there.
2 months later.
Yeah, and it's frustrating. It's very frustrating. So that's why I think like once per quarter feels really good. Like to me, that feels really good. And one of the big things that I focus on is building one set after another and having them, really be cohesive with the sets prior. So I'm really proud of set 2. I'm so pumped about it, and I feel like it really is. It's the cherry on top of set 1. I think it really brings it together in a super cool and meaningful way that's going to make the game even more exciting.
All right. Answer. Let's move on to our next question from Rando. They ask, will tournaments be a regular thing with Elestrals, or is it going to be something that the community will have to take care of?
Yeah, so great question. So I think when it comes to tournaments, that's probably one of the areas that I don't have as good clarity on in terms of the future, and I'll tell you exactly why. So the first thing I do have is I have an incredible head judge, right? So Bo or Minor Deviation is phenomenal. They're in the weeds and writing the rules with me and writing the how to play guide and all that stuff. And we hired a second judge, Siberian, to come onto the team and help with that process as well. So we have two really awesome judges. We're working on creating training manuals, working on creating all the material that we would need to facilitate getting new judges into our program and ultimately being able to facilitate, actual tournaments and real kind of gameplay. In terms of widespread tournaments, I don't think you can do that until you really have the cards in store, right? I think this kind of goes back to question number one. You kind of have to walk before you run here. And, step one is really being able to have our direct-to-customer channel set up and being able to sell product to you guys and have that system in place, right? And then step two is then we start to get it out to stores. Once the stores have the cards to sell to their customers, it's a lot easier to say, oh, let's pick a Wednesday night and run an Elestrals tournament or whatever. Let's start to set up a tournament circuit. But I also want to emphasize, it kind of comes back to the same point I made in the first question, is I want to make sure that we can take the learnings, really hear the community's feedback. I mean, if you see my personal account on Twitter, I'm always asking people questions when I see stuff about TCGs. Even this morning, people were talking about tournament organizers and stuff, and I'm like, hey, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, because I just want to gather feedback on what other people's experiences, what brings you to a tournament, what makes you incentivized to compete, not only in a single standalone tournament, but in a circuit. Is it prize money? Is it camaraderie with friends? Is it the thrill of competition? Like really trying to understand from a competitive perspective. I know what drives me, but understanding what drives everyone else to those things. And if I can understand that and I can provide those tools to the stores, then they can be successful and ultimately the tournaments can be successful. So I 100% want to have tournaments. We're going to have tournaments. It may be more sporadic initially, right? Like, think of it maybe as like a regional, like a once every, 6 months, once every 4 months. I think that's probably what you'll see starting, right? In kind of major areas. And maybe those are piggybacking off of existing events in terms of like conventions that already happen that may have events that you can kind of run inside their event. Things like that I think are a really good starting point that allows us to learn, allows us to kind of get our feet wet in this space and not kind of try to run without, having our training wheels on first. There's a few pieces to the puzzle that have to be set up first for us to get there, but 100% I want to have tournaments. I look forward to our first big event. I can't wait to do it, and that's certainly on the agenda, but I just want to be very honest that I don't think that's really going to be in place until, with any sort of regularity until next year at least. Just because there's a lot of pieces that have to happen for us to get there. But I believe it's going to happen. I truly do. It's just a matter of all the things kind of happening to get there and then making sure that we can, you got
to have the foundation set,
Exactly, yeah. And I think that's going to be a theme you'll hear in my overall strategy in general is just, making sure I have the pieces of the puzzle in place before I try to just, kind of blow this up in a way, right? Because I feel like there's a lot of lessons to be made, a lot of mistakes to be made and learn from, a lot of feedback to take in, and a lot of, just tweaking and adjusting to make sure that we can get to the best end result and best experience at the end of the day, right? That's what we want to do.
I agree wholeheartedly, because again, like you said before, you gotta learn how to walk before you can run.
For sure.
All right, let's move on to our next question. This question comes from Piffling. During the Elestrals Kickstarter, I was seeing a lot of comparisons to Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! Do you feel that these are justified, and what are you doing to help differentiate Elestrals from competitors?
Sure. So, great question. I think naturally, I'm in a position where anything I do is going to be tied back to Pokemon in some way, shape, or form.
Probably, yeah.
I made this my career for like a decade, and, I'm very proud of all the things we've done in that time period. I think naturally, there's an association there, right? And I think that's fine. I can look at it two ways, right? I can get angry about it and try to like push to differentiate and try to push people away and say, no, this is not that. Or I could say, hey, you know what? I love Pokemon too. I love it so much, I decided to create my own game and like take the feedback that you guys give so we can make something even cooler, right? And I think that's the attitude that I've chosen to take because the other one is like not a healthy one, just being honest, right? So
also people can like more than one thing.
Exactly, right? Crazy. I think that's a good point too, right? You can like more than one thing. But in terms of the comparisons, right? Obviously, I'm not going to shy away from the fact that I was heavily inspired by Pokemon. I was heavily inspired by Yu-Gi-Oh! I took inspiration from all different places. I took some inspiration from, you know, my daughter watching Frozen, if I'm being honest, right? So like, there's a lot of places that you find inspiration, but I really do believe that Elestrals can stand on its own. I believe it does stand on its own. I believe the gameplay itself is very unique. I believe the way the spirit system functions as your life resource and your, you know, mana in a way, and your energy, and how it kind of, you know, blends all those cool mechanics together to create something very dynamic. That is super unique, and I think it's something that the TCG space has been really open to so far, and I think will be really impactful over a long period of time. I really believe that, and I think our creature design is incredible. So I think with those pieces in place, Elestral certainly in my mind has its own path to stand alone, and I think that those comparisons, I'm just going to take them as compliments and just be really stoked to be in the position I'm in and to have all the knowledge and history and experience that I had over the decade of creating Pokemon content. Like, you know, few people, you know, probably have put as many hours into that franchise as I have, and I'm so excited to be able to put that passion and love into my own project now and really, you know, do something special with that. So, yeah, I think it's going to be great, and I think we can definitely differentiate ourselves, and I think we're going to have a great time doing it.
I think that's a very positive mindset to have, because again, like, both Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! Are very, very successful franchises. So, like, to be compared to them, in a sense, like, not to, like, say, like, oh, you're trying to ride their coattails, but trying to say, like, hey, look, this reminds me of this super successful, like, card game and whatnot. Like, that just goes to show that, you know, people are paying attention to it.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And I think too, like, the other thing is, you know, they did it first, right? They were the ones who kind of pioneered this space, and I think anything that comes after it is going to naturally have some comparisons. I don't think that those should be looked at in a negative way. If anything, you know, the nostalgia that I had as a child, you know, opening Pokemon and having that be a part of, you know, a huge part of my life, even, you know, as a kid and obviously to adulthood, you know, being able to maybe potentially give that to people who are interested in Elestrals now and sharing it with their kids, it's something really special. Like, I can tell you, my daughter, she loves Leviathan. We play Elestrals Fish, where we play like Go Fish, but with Elestral cards. You know, she loves the cards. She's always grabbing my my slabs and stuff, and she's got like 9 or 10 in her room, and she loves it. And I think that if other parents can share that kind of joy with their kids or capture their childhood,
right there.
Yeah, that's something really special in my opinion. So
that's awesome. That's truly like an incredible thing that you're able to give to your own daughter. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's hype.
Okay, so let's move on because time is a factor.
Yeah, it's all good.
We have a question from Wirtz. He says,
Tim?
first off, that you are a very busy workhorse, but he wants to know, do you have any plans on letting other Elestrals team members spotlight in some videos? He would love to hear from your art director and other leads about their areas and their ideas on the game itself.
Yeah, so I think Keith being on this call is a step forward towards that. I think that there's a lot of space in our content creation side of things for the team members to be involved. I think a lot of people don't realize how big the team of Elestrals is. I'm actually the only employee of Elestrals, but we have a ton of people on what's called a freelance contract, basically, which allows people to work on the project kind of as they want. That's how pretty much all my contracts are, which is really awesome. But our team is over 50 people. We're probably approaching,
there's so many people on the team now that I don't know who they all are.
There's a lot of people. So we're over 50 people. A lot of those people are incredible artists, but nonetheless, there's a lot of people involved. So I think that there's going to be opportunities to bring people on to the channel or to have them give their perspective for sure. I think finding the space for that to be, you know, what it is definitely something we'll keep open-minded about and continue to work on. One of the things that I really want to do is bring in other content creators outside of the Elestrals team to check out the game and kind of showcase gameplay and things like that. So I'm hoping that I can team up with other creators in the space. But I think in terms of our internal team, there's certainly opportunities there. I think you're going to see, at the very least, cameos or people kind of popping in here and there, like my editor KG popping in some videos, or you might see Steve, who works on the mobile app. He might be in like a live video playing against me on like tabletop, right, with us playing with physical cards. So you'll probably see some of that just naturally, but you know, definitely going to be cool to kind of get some different perspectives. We've been trying to tie in some of that stuff, like with the kind of speed arts, showing different art styles, really making sure we tag our artists and stuff, so you guys can see the incredible people that are working on the project. And yeah, we'll see kind of how it all falls, but certainly something I'm open-minded to.
They all deserve the credit. They've all been amazing.
Yeah, for sure, man.
All right. So our next question actually is going to be from Spicy Sausage. Man, these names. I'm also super excited, by the way. Let me just before I get to their question. Since in this format, I'm the one that gets to pronounce everyone's names. If I make a mistake, it's on me. That's a really great like amount of pressure. Uh, but Spicy Sausage would like to ask, which Elestral or Rune card had the most interesting design process?
Okay, that's an interesting question. So, let me think about this for a second. So, I'm gonna assume when you say design process that you're speaking to the effect itself rather than the art design, because I feel like...
You could also give two answers.
Yeah, I could. So, I'm actually gonna pull up, like, it kind of just... It was Rune or art, or Elestral, right? Was the question?
It was Elestral or Rune, yep.
Okay, so... Let me, I'm going to take a moment and pause. I'm going to look through some cards and I'm going to give a good answer. So give me a second. All right, so I think I'm going to tell this story. I don't know if this is the best answer, but I think it's a fun little nugget about the game. So one of the things that I wanted to do was create creatures and Elestrals that were based on, like, you know, obviously really cool animals or things that were a little weird or different than you would maybe expect. And I came across this animal called a Honduran white bat, I think it's called. And it's this like cute little fuzzy, you know, white bat, you know, that would fly around at nighttime. And I asked one of our artists, Luan or LMR, I said, hey, I'd love to try to create a bat like Elestral. Would you be willing to try take a stab at? So that's ultimately what resulted in Boom Bat. You might be able to figure that out. But the real turning point to that was when he just on his own created the Ascension for it and just sent it to me. And it was Sonicor, which is what you guys know as Sonicor today. And I remember looking at Sonicor for the first time and I was like, man, we really have a shot. Like, we really have a shot to do something with this game. This Elestral is insane. And it quickly became one of my favorite Elestrals. I think it's phenomenally designed. I think it's an S tier design, personally. And I remember wanting to make it a really good card. And obviously, I have a pretty lengthy history playing Yu-Gi-Oh! So Jinzo was a card that was really dominant in the day when I played. And I wanted to kind of create something similar with Sonicor. I felt like that was a really cool design choice. So maybe not like the most interesting design process, but it was certainly an impactful moment when I first saw Sonicor in front of me and I was like, wow, this is really, really cool. And generally speaking, I would say like,
I think you've had like, I mean, I hate to interrupt, but like, I think you've had a lot of like, oh man, like this is it moments, like for success. So obviously this is like one of those, like, but how many of those moments have you had?
I mean, I would say I've had a few moments where there was like a time to reflect on kind of the feedback I had gotten, and generally speaking, while I have seen negative feedback about the project, of course, people who have been in the industry, not just like random people shouting into the, you know, the online void, generally people have been really positive to me and given really good feedback and stuff. So that's been really positive along the way, is kind of having people, you know, say, hey, I think this is really cool or whatever. So there's definitely been times where I've been able to stop and reflect on that and say, you know, this is really cool. But I try not to let that affect kind of how I look at this in the future, because at the end of the day, like, we had this amazing Kickstarter run and it was awesome, but I still feel like there's a lot to prove, there's a lot to grow, there's a lot to build off of. And, you know, I don't take the Kickstarter as like proof that this is like the next big thing. Like, I believe it is, but I know that there's still so much work to be done to really make this the game that I want it to be. So I'm excited for that challenge, and like, we're just gonna put the grind in every single day to make that happen. So I take the moments to reflect and be happy in that moment and be relieved or proud or whatever it is, but then I kind of just refocus and remember that there's still a lot of work to be done. So we push forward.
And or which Rune had the most interesting design process? I'm pretty sure we can probably say that was just Gorgon's Gaze.
Yeah, I mean, so Gorgon's Gaze is a really interesting card that's had a lot of interesting rulings around it and design choices around it, and it's made for some complex kind of decision making, I would say.
Didn't Gorgon's Gaze also like kind of almost change the rules in a sense?
Yeah, I mean, yes, naturally a handful of cards like resulted in the rules being updated or worked around, because it exposed us to corner cases or instances where we need to make adjustments to ensure that there's clarity and proper functionality and stuff. And that's where those judges I mentioned earlier come into play, to make sure that we're really thinking of every scenario and that we have every sort of question or corner case or whatever it may be figured out. Gorgon's Gaze definitely does that. There's a handful of runes that do that. We certainly launched base set with quite a few dynamic runes. I think that's one thing people will notice about Elestrals versus a lot of other card games is I wasn't afraid to dive in and have the game be good. And I don't mean that in like a negative way towards anyone else, but I think that a lot of times card games, they tiptoe in and they release a lot of really, really bad cards, and it makes the game way less playable. Whereas with what I tried to do, at least, and I think I executed on, was making it so there was a handful of viable cards, a lot of viable cards that could be mixed and matched in really unique ways to create for fun and dynamic gameplay. So I think we have that. I didn't shy away from.
And once again, shout out to the judges. Again, I've talked to Bo a few times, and Bo's just very kind and always very helpful. So, all right, so we're gonna go to Ramadi now. They ask, what's your plan for if a problematic card or combo of cards get found after printing?
Yeah, so I think that that's a question that a lot of people worry about, is just cards that maybe slip through the cracks, or combinations that slip through the cracks and they become overpowered or over-centralizing in a metagame. And we've seen that happen in every game, right? I mean, that happens. I think there's a level of understanding that players are really good, and no matter how big of a team that I could create in terms of playtesters, there's always going to be opportunities for people to find something that maybe we didn't consider. In the current Elestral situation, the kind of standout deck right now in kind of pre-launch is called Voltempest, based around Voltempest. It's a very strong card. There's counters to it though, right? And I think Elestrals has a side deck that allows you to swap in for best of 3, and you can counter a lot of these things. So I think that the side deck certainly will help naturally, and I think that it's my job to do my best to create checks and balances within the game. I think if there is something that's a little too OP, initially, there's always the opportunity to remedy that with another set, like the next set coming out, potentially having a card that can directly impact that deck to make it a little less powerful, or at least provide some counterplay. Alternatively, there's always an opportunity to go into a banned restricted type list. I don't know if that is going to be the ultimate direction that we go, whether it's that or like a rotational format or, those different approaches. I think we're still a good ways away from having to make those types of decisions. I'm very open to both options. I don't think I have a set in stone approach. I've very much so been privy to banned restricted list formats. That's something that I've played a lot of in games that I've played in, but I also understand that rotation-based formats are something that are very popular, and they're commonplace in a lot of big TCGs as well. So there's a lot of different solutions that have already been thought out and explored by other games. So I think what I'll do is I'll probably look at the knowledge of those and try to formulate an opinion and a decision that makes the most sense in the context of the scenario we're presented with. But I'm not too stressed about that. You know what I mean? Like if something comes into play, it's my job to really hear the feedback of the community and really understand if this is like someone who just got mad because they lost the game, or if this is like a real problem and it makes the game unfun for people. Then we'll obviously address it in an appropriate manner.
That makes a lot of sense. All right, let's move on to a question from Parduo. They ask, how successful did you think the Kickstarter was going to be, and how many stretch goals were planned, and how many were made up during the Kickstarter?
So that's a funny question, and by me laughing, you might be able to deduce my thoughts. So I went into Kickstarter with a $1 goal. That was a bold statement. I think some people took it the wrong way. For me, I did that because, one, I felt like no matter what was going to happen at that point, I had dedicated so much time and passion into this project. I was going to make the project happen no matter what. Like whether I was printing 50 booster boxes and losing tens of thousands and more, actually it would have been more, dollars in doing so, or I was going to print, 10,000 booster boxes and we were going to have this hugely successful TCG Kickstarter campaign, right? Regardless, I was going to make the game. Like I was really proud of it, and I was really dedicated, and I really believed in it. So the $1 goal was kind of like a joke in that regard, but it was also like hey, I want you guys to feel comfortable knowing that I'm gonna make this happen no matter what. That was my focus, and that's why we had prototype decks made and all that stuff. In terms of like how successful I thought it was gonna be, it's hard to say. So I had the prototype deck sales in September. I think it was September, October, prior to the Kickstarter, and that blew my expectations away. Like we sold a lot more prototype decks than I was anticipating. I thought we would sell maybe like 500, and I said to myself, like, if we'd sold 1,000, I'd be like over the moon, and we sold like 5,000. So that gave me like a pretty good understanding that there were people interested at the very least. I'm glad I did that because it gave people a true understanding of like what I was trying to build. I didn't want any smoke and mirrors for the Kickstarter. I wanted it to be really open and honest about what we were trying to do. And in terms of like the stretch goals and stuff, we were not prepared at all. Our artist team probably made at least 10 card arts during the Kickstarter campaign. So shout outs to them for stepping up because they went hard. Like pretty much our free pack that everyone gets has 27 cards, I think 26 or 27 cards. And I'm pretty sure like at least like 15 or 20 of those were made during Kickstarter. Like in the moment, like, hey, we need a new stretch goal. Can someone make a stellar rare of this? Like it was frantic. Some stuff I had prepared, like I had the plushies prepared. The artist collection was ready. Like I knew that we had those options. We had, we could build off of the artist collection as part of it. I had the digital app. I knew I could announce that. Like we had some things up our sleeve where we knew like, okay, we can announce this. I got samples of this. I can announce this at some point during the campaign as a stretch goal. We can make it make sense in that perspective. But a lot of the goals were like made up in the process while the campaign was going on. And it was a wild few weeks because I was obviously trying to juggle my marathon at the same time. It was, I wouldn't recommend it, but we managed, and, shout out to our artists and our Kickstarter team. I brought in an expert Kickstarter team, Off-Duty Ninja, to help us run the campaign, and they did their thing. So we made it happen, and you guys made it happen, and it was a wild ride for sure.
It was definitely a wild ride. It was fun to watch, for sure. Next question comes from Unloaded Save, and they want to ask, what made you decide on 8 elements?
Oh man, so what's funny is like the game was actually originally supposed to be, I'm trying to think, I was only gonna do 5 to start, right? I think like we were gonna announce the game with 5, and I was going to like introduce new elements, and I had Frost already in mind, right? And I'm pretty sure the decision to make the 8 elements actually came in the card template design phase, which brings us way back. Like that probably puts us in like March of last year. So while the artist who I hired to design our card templates was creating all of these different things, when they were creating the back of the card, I was looking at the kind of the aesthetic that it had, and I knew that I was probably gonna want more elements. So we kind of just said, okay, like here's the idea we have. Let's make these elements, and we'll kind of figure it out later. So I'm not gonna tell you what the last 2 unrevealed elements actually are, but just know I didn't know what they were until like a few months ago. We designed the symbol for them and the colors for them, and I had a general idea of what I was going to do with that, but it was kind of designed and I would figure it out later was really the thought there, because I really wanted the aesthetic on the back of the card. And then I just felt like 8 elements was a really good place to be in terms of diversity, and it gave us a place where I don't need to add a new element anytime soon, if at all, right? Like I don't plan at this stage to add an additional element outside of the 8. I think that it really covers all of the things that I want to cover and the design space that I want to be in for this game, at least for the foreseeable future. So it's kind of funny how I stumbled into it, but I think ultimately the end result will end up being really epic, because I'm really stoked about it. And we've got I've got at least 50 or 60 different sketches right now. And I would say at least 50% of those are usable, and like not usable, but like good, that are going to make the game for the last 2 elements, right? So, and obviously we have, 25, 30 new Elestrals for the Frost element for set 2. But in terms of the last 2 elements, like I said, I have a lot of ideas that are already sketched out, and they're amazing. Like I think that the game goes to another level in set 2, and then I think once you guys see set 3 and 4 in terms of designs, it's a whole nother, like we're in a different galaxy at that point. It's incredible. It's really good stuff.
And I'm looking forward to seeing where we go from there, because I've seen a few things from set 2, not many. I don't think I've seen anything from set 3 yet, so that's definitely really exciting.
I know you've got a lot of spoilers. I've given you a lot of little teasers, Keith.
Yeah. It's one of the perks of being kind of on the inside.
Yes.
All right. Next, we have a question from Rat King. They ask, are there certain criteria you use when designing your Elestrals? Like they can't be too human, or they can't be too complicated, etc.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. So I would say that we don't really have any like defined hard like stop points in terms of where the artist can go in terms of discretion. I think now that we've designed, 100 plus Elestrals, we certainly have some general ideas about where we want to go. But I would say that in terms of the design space itself, I really haven't put too many restrictions on what the creature itself looks like and what can and cannot be. The one thing I will say is, generally speaking, you'll notice most of the Elestral cards outside of the artist collection are designed in a relatively similar style in terms of shading and lighting and stuff. I felt that it was important to present these new creatures to people in a similar kind of footing. I like how other games will use different types of art, like clay art or 3D art or whatever it is, to create their card art, and that's something I want to explore more of, as I kind of hinted at earlier with the artist collection stuff. But I think the first time someone sees this new Elestral, they should see it in a familiar style. So we've kind of set the style in terms of the artistic style in place for Elestrals, but in terms of the Elestral design itself, there's a little bit more variation there. For me, I have my own preferences about what I like in terms of, monster design. I'm not someone who likes humanoid monsters that much, but you'll notice that we have a few that are kind of closer in that regard. I think for me, it was important to, control the design space of the Elestrals themselves to ensure that we kind of have something for everybody, right? Like, we have an Elestral that maybe isn't my favorite design-wise, but appeals to someone else. And I think that as long as that's part of the philosophy, then we'll end up in a really cool place. As long as everyone can have a favorite and feel good about that, then I'll feel good about that too. And I think that we're in a really good place for that.
It's nice to hear that you're saying that you're not just trying to adhere to just your own specific taste just because you're creating it.
Yeah, no, I didn't want to do that, and I don't think that that's appropriate. Like, I know in other games like Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh or whatever, like, I have certain creatures that I am drawn towards in those games, and maybe those don't appeal to someone else. I know, like, for me personally, like, in the context of Pokemon, like, I'm not a Lucario fan, right? Like, I'm not a Cinderace fan. There's a lot of Pokemon like that I just don't like. That's just not my cup of tea. But I know a lot of people really do like those types of Pokemon, and we want to make sure that we have Elestrals that can kind of cater or be appealing to different people who have different interests. So I think that is, as part of the design philosophy, that's definitely a focus.
That's awesome. Let's move on to a question from Neon Rolf. Neon Rolf asks, did you or will you ever consider making a 4-cost Elestral?
So at the current state of the game, like, we have basically built everything to be 3-cost, and this kind of ties into like databasing and stuff. So currently all of our stuff is set up to allow for 3-cost. I don't anticipate changing that anytime soon. I don't want to say never, because ideas come and go. Like, you just don't know what something can look like in 4 or 5 years or whatever it is. But in the current state of the game, I think 3-cost is really kind of at the upper limit. I think that there's ways through card text that you can make cards more expensive to play. We've shown that with cards like Shield of Achilles, where you're paying a cost based on what you're affecting. So if you bounce a 3-cost, then that card costs you 4 to play, as opposed to bouncing a 1-cost, and now the card only costs you 2 to play, right? So we can create that same kind of situation through card text effect, and that actually ends up playing a little bit better in terms of negation and stuff. So there's design space there to allow for that kind of power creep, which I know everyone's waiting for me to say. But at the current state of the game, like, I have no plans of having 4-cost cards that extend beyond the text box. I don't think it's necessary, and I don't think it's needed by any means in the card game right now.
I think that makes a lot of sense. All right, let's move on to a question from Jack Kiyomu. He asks, can we get a teaser as to how many or what kind of starter decks Set 2 might come with?
Yeah, so I think that's a good question. So I will tell you that there's going to be 2 starter decks in Set 2, and they are both based on Frost, which is our new element, our 6th element, and both starter decks also will feature a secondary element. So I'm really stoked. I feel like these starter decks are really, really cool. They're still, like, work in progress. Like, the cover Elestral for the starter decks are there, and the general like theme is there. I still have to like actually decide every one of the cards that goes in the starter deck, but it's like I have the design and stuff, and it's in my head. I just have to like put it into paper and actually like make the cards. But yeah, I feel really good about it. I think the starter decks are going to be worth grabbing. I think that they're going to allow some of the rare cards to be more accessible. They're going to give players a way to play the game and learn the game. And I think in these particular 2 starter decks for Set 2, they are some very, very all or nothing strategies. And I'm very proud of those card effects. I think they're super cool. So it'll be a good introduction to the game for people who missed on base set, and it'll be a really cool way to dive in for those who are excited and have been consistently playing.
I think we're all always excited for more. Okay, let's move on to a question from I'm going to say Tertius is how I'm going to pronounce this. Will starter deck exclusive cards be reprinted in future sets? Perhaps after a few sets of starter decks have come around, having a smaller print run of the exclusives as their own pack?
Yeah, so I think that's something that is a piece of feedback that I gathered from Kickstarter. So initially I thought that putting in starter deck exclusive cards was going to be like overall like a positive thing, but I did see that some people were a little perturbed about it, and I can understand why. The kind of best feedback that I got is like, hey, if you're gonna do this, then probably put a full playset in the deck, which we did not do, admittedly, right? So like, for example, Gorgon's Gaze is a card that's accessible in the Fire starter deck, and there's 2 copies in there. So if you wanted to get 3 copies, you would in theory need to trade or buy another starter deck. So I will say that in the future, outside of base set, right, because that's already kind of there, like first edition and stuff, outside of base set, when we move to set 2, I'm not going to put any starter deck exclusive cards in the starter decks for set 2. At least at the current moment, I don't plan to. Whether I bring that idea back in the future, I don't know. But if I do put a starter deck exclusive card in the starter deck in terms of like a functional card, like not a different art, I'll put 3 copies in the future, just to kind of make it, I guess, more fair, more accessible, right? But to answer the original question, yes is the answer. So I can tell you that I already have plans for a Gorgon's Gaze reprint. It's gonna be a while until it comes, but I'm thinking probably like end of year next year. There are some cards that are getting reprinted in set 2 as well. They make sense in the context of the set. Maybe some Elestrals got new Ascensions and things like that. So there's some context there where it makes sense. But I'm certainly not shying away from reprinting, cards with the same effect and different art, or even printing a holo version of it, or just putting it in another set or another starter deck to make it more accessible. Like I'll probably put some of those starter deck exclusive cards from base set in the set 2 starter deck, starter deck, so they're no longer exclusive to just the first starter deck. Like there's some things that we can do to make it more accessible. So definitely took the feedback on that, and we'll definitely make it a little bit better in the future for sure.
That makes sense. Let's move on to another question now from, this is one of those names that I'm going to mispronounce and they're going to get mad at me. I'm going to go with Psycho Mikey. Have you considered something along the lines of offering monthly or quarterly opportunities to buy new promos and or artist collection packs to those who are signed up on the website or members of the Discord community?
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure this guy probably is NDA'd, and they just broke their NDA. No, I'm just kidding about that. But yeah, so that's kind of something that I've been hinting at and alluding to in this kind of little AMA. I have some really, really cool plans in the works in terms of what that's going to look like and how that can be a really cool way to stay involved with Elestrals without breaking the bank, for one, and without being overwhelmed by consistent metagame shifts. And that's exactly the general idea. So I'm not totally ready to give you guys the full announcement for that. I could, but I really want to get a couple other things in place. But I would say stay tuned for something like that in the next probably 4 to 8 weeks. We have a pretty big announcement relating to that, and I think it's something that is going to blow you away. I think we have something that's going to be exciting, and it's going to be have value in the context of like it's going to be worth. And it's not going to be overwhelming. It's going to be cost effective. It's going to be exciting. And I think it's going to be a really positive thing for Elestral. So it's in the works. And hopefully there'll be a follow-up announcement in the next, like I said, 2 months or so.
Awesome. I'm already looking forward to it. All right. Let's move on to a question now. I'm going to go Steck is their name. Has there been a point or points in this project where it shifted from a fun passion project and then turned into lots of hard work? And if not, what has helped meter the workload versus fun capacity?
So that's a really good question. So it's still fun. I was just talking to Keith before this, Q&A, and I had told Keith that I had spoken to my trainer this morning about my physical trainer about how much fun I've had creating content for Elestrals now that we're kind of like in the swing of things, and how much I appreciate kind of this infancy stage of creating content again, right? Like not that you take it for granted, but I've been doing this for a really long time in the YouTube space, and 1,000 views now on like my aDrive content doesn't hit like 1,000 views did 10 years ago, right? But 1,000 views on an Elestrals video, man, that's a home run, and it's just a different feeling, and I don't expect everyone to understand that, but it's something that certainly is very exciting. So I'm super stoked every day to create Elestrals related stuff, whether it's card effects or ideas for new Elestrals or content itself like videos and stuff. It's something that I'm really motivated to do. But don't get it twisted. This is 100% a job. It is a lot of work. It is by far the most amount of work that I've had to do in my career. It is trumps anything I did as a content creator in the Pokemon space. This is a lot more work. There's a lot more pressure. There's a lot more at stake. I think a lot of people, maybe not a lot of people, but like the main criticism I received as a content creator launching Elestrals was that it was like some sort of a cash grab. And I can sit here confidently and say to you that I still have yet to take a single penny out of the business. I haven't paid myself for any of my work. I work pretty much every single day, all day on Elestrals. And I just want to build something awesome and put my passion and love in this project and share it with people. So with all that being said, like it's certainly work. It's something that I really appreciate. I kind of created this job out of thin air for myself, and I'm really excited about the future and just like trying to just appreciate every moment of it. But I will say this, there's kind of the other side of it, where when I was creating content full time, which I would say I am, but in a different way now, right? My day was, I wake up, I create videos, I stream for many hours at a time, right? And it's like this constant like YouTube, Twitch content grind as a content creator in the space. Now my job is very much so, my day-to-day is very different, right? I spend a lot of time where I can be on my phone answering messages to kind of, give the feedback I need to give to allow the business to keep running. I spend a lot of time kind of doing things that are a little bit more flexible, a little bit more fluid in terms of what I'm doing. It's not that I have to be in front of a camera for 4 or 5 hours a day streaming. So it allows me to stop. It allows me to, pause and say, you know what, it's okay. Let me spend this time with my kids or something, right? So. Which is something that I've spent a lot, like I've definitely upped my family time, right? In this process, my son was born as well. So now I have 2 kids. So I've certainly increased, my family spending time and my playtime with my kids and my involvement. And I'm there for everything now. And it's been a really positive change for me. So while the work is much heavier and the stakes are much higher and the risk is higher and there's all this pressure, right, to deliver something amazing and make sure I'm owning up to the promises and the things that I'm promising you guys, because you guys are putting your faith and money and everything into this project. I have a responsibility to you to create something awesome, right? So there's that pressure, but again, the positive too to all that is that I do get more time with my family. I do have a more flexible schedule. I'm less stressed about like having to create a video today or stream for 5 hours today or whatever. It's certainly a unique change for me in my career, but it's one that I've met in a positive stride, and I'm just learning as I go and having fun with it. But yeah, I still enjoy it, and I'm still excited, and this is a dream job, so I'm having a blast.
Yeah, like you said earlier, like we've known each other for many years, and like this is like the happiest I've seen you working on Elestrals. And so like it's just really nice to see like such like how much of a positive change it's had on you in your life.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I love creating content all those years that I did, but it was a grind, and it was a different grind, and it was something that when you do anything for a long time, it's gonna not have the same impact on you, and it may wear you down a little bit, and I would say that was certainly the case. But this is a breath of fresh air, and I want to say too that I recognize that when I started the Elestrals, and like there was a few checkpoints along the way where it got more and more serious. And now, like, people getting their cards and stuff is like another checkpoint. But the Kickstarter kind of closing, and us like looking back on that, I knew that there's no turning back, right? Like, I have committed at least the next 5 years of my career, at least, right, to making this something awesome. And it's probably going to be a lot longer than that, right? If things go the way I hope and envision them going, right? It's a significant commitment, right? I didn't just go into this saying, okay, I'm going to launch Kickstarter and then like that's it, see you guys, right? Like when I launched this game, I knew, okay, this is my job. Like I cannot leave people hanging here. I need to hold up my end of the bargain. I need to create something awesome, and I need to make sure that this is at the forefront of my professional decision making now, because I have a lot of people who are invested in this, right? There's we raised $1.4 million, and when you kind of add everything together after backer kit and stuff, like we're up there in terms of your guys involvement and stuff, and I carry that responsibility very seriously. It's my job to make this awesome, and I hope I don't disappoint. I'm pretty confident that we're gonna get where we gotta get to, so we'll have some fun along the way too.
I think we're all having fun along the way. All right, believe it or not, Dan, we're actually down to the last question I have for you today.
Oh my gosh, Keith.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. This last question is going to come from River Jix. They ask, outside of the card game, since that is the main thing, which part of merchandising, sleeves, playmats, plushies, etc., are you the most excited about?
That's a great question. So I would say plushies. I really like plushies. You can see just in the background of my camera, I have so many plushies of different franchises. I mean, I have this giant Butterfree, right? So I really like plushies, and fortunately, they're like not the hardest thing for us to make. You might think that they're like really hard, but I've been lucky enough to find a couple different like really good plushie manufacturers already, and I think that the quality will speak for itself. So I like plushies because they're relatively quick-ish to make. They're not stupid expensive to make a plushie prototype, right? Like, they're expensive, don't get me wrong. Like, you're still paying, hundreds of dollars to get this plushie, but when you look at like plastic molds and stuff, guys, it's crazy. Like, I want to have like figurines and stuff one day, but I can't even justify doing prototypes of them right now because it's just so expensive. But plushies are more feasible in that regard, and I think they're fun. I think they bring so much life, and they're fun to have around your room or your office or whatever. I've got young kids who love them. My daughter loves every time I get a new Elestral plushie prototype in and stuff, and that part's really exciting for me. So I would say plushies overall. The hollow cards are really good though. Like the Stellars, like when I hold the Stellar in my hand, I'm like, man, this is my game. Like this is sick. I gotta give some love to the cards. I know he said outside of the cards, but I think plushies so far. And then the other thing I'll just like on a like just a little shout to it, the binders. So I haven't collected cards in a binder since I was like, I don't know, 12, right? I would say even in all the years of me like ripping Pokemon and stuff on the channel, I never really like put it into binders. I just have stacks, whatever. But I'm actually like putting binders of Elestrals, and I really enjoy the process. There's something I don't know, relaxing, fulfilling about like flipping through the pages and seeing all these beautiful cards and having them in order, and like seeing an empty slot and being like, yo, I need that. It's dangerous, but it's very fun, and it's something that I've come to really appreciate. So I have my binder right here, so you guys know I'm serious about it, and I'm really pumped about my binder. I've got all the prototypes. This is all prototype base set. I'm almost done with prototype base set. I'm still missing a few cards, some of the full arts you can see. And then skipping ahead, I've got, this is Founders Edition base set. So like you can see I'm actually still missing cards here too, right? So Founders Edition base set I've got. And then I started putting in all the promos. So these are like the prototypes that like don't even exist out in the world. I've got at least one of each of those prototypes that, in my binder. So I think I might have just leaked something, but that's okay. So anyway, so I really appreciate that aspect of it. So plushies for sure, but the binders are a shout out there because it's brought me back, and it's something that I've had a lot of fun doing. So I hope that you guys can share some of that same same excitement.
That's awesome. And sorry if that question accidentally made you leak something, but
no, I think we'll be
alright.
Right.
If you leak it, it's an official reveal.
It's all good. Yeah, it's all good. So, but Keith, this has been great. I really appreciate you coming on and asking me all these questions. And big shouts to everybody in the Discord. You guys can join our Discord server at discord.gg/Elestrals, and you can just go to the AMA section, just leave a question there. Hopefully I'll get to it. I have been answering a few questions just by like text in there too, and I might do that for some other ones that may not justify like a full video response, but I want to be really open with you guys in this process. I really want to be honest with you guys about the development of it. To me, like the way I see things is like, as long as I'm putting in the effort and I'm being open and honest and I take in the feedback and we just try to make this better every single day, then we're gonna go amazing places, and you have my commitment to keeping that philosophy at the forefront of the decisions that we make. And I think as long as we do that, then we're headed towards something positive. You can't fail, Keith. You can't fail if you don't give up. So as long as you keep trying, then you'll never fail. So I really like that quote, and I think it's something to live by, and it's something that I remind myself every day, is you can't fail if you don't give up. So just keep trying. So we're gonna keep trying, and we got a lot of exciting things ahead. So I appreciate all y'all being here for the ride.
And thanks for having me. Always a joy to be able to sit down and talk to you.
Likewise, man. I appreciate it, and If anyone has any feedback or any thoughts or comments or concerns or anything, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. Big shouts to Keith, who helped put this all together, and it was Keith's idea, so great idea, dude, and I appreciate you.
It was not my idea. I stole it from someone.
Oh, well, we'll give Keith the credit.
I don't deserve the credit.
Thank you guys so much. We'll see you guys next time. Peace.